The 9 Years Podcast.
The following announcement has been approved by Offpod, the podcast watchdog.
Hello, my name is Stuart Deakins and I would like to apologise for my comments on last week's show, in which I may have suggested that I was unaware of the identity of American comedian and TV host Ellen DeGeneres. I do, of course, know who Ellen is, and am very supportive of her work and lifestyle choices. I would like to apologise to Ellen and her 553.5 million Twitter followers for any offence caused.
Alright, welcome to episode 28 of the 9 Years Podcast with Nick Draper. My hips don't lie and I'm starting to feel it's right. Joined once again by Stuart Deakins, for whom it's lucky that his breasts are small and humble so you don't confuse them with mountains. We're available on, as always, iTunes, YouTube and SoundCloud, as well as Podomatic.com. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Don't forget to search for @9YRS Podcast on Instagram as well. And don't forget updates on our website now, 9YRSpodcast.com. Today we'll broadcast the second half of our interview with Seb Brown, plus we'll look back at the Yeovil defeat, preview the weekend's action, discuss the January transfer window, as well as bring you all our other regular features, including Unnecessary Censors and the much-vaunted Birthdays game. Not a lot of time this week, so once again we're going to go straight into it. And Stu, it's been rather chilly this week, but nothing was frostier than the reception our team got at the end of Saturday's defeat to Yeovil, the end of our unbeaten run, the end of our opportunity of making it 5 wins in a row for the first time in too many years. I'm going to start with something that came up on our website article. We look at 5 things every week that we've learned from each game. This week I touched on the idea that teams have got smart to the position of the sun at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Once again, we lost the toss at kickoff. We were turned round. We attacked the Kempflow in the first half, which is not our preference. And Yeovil took advantage, used the sun to help or aid their second equaliser, and after that sort of ground out the victory. How much of a problem is it when we get turned around and we attack what I consider to be the wrong way in the second half? Yeah,
it is becoming a bit of a problem now, isn't it? Because it's obvious what's happening, because there's no sense in the away team turning us around because we've got fans behind both ends now. So there's no sense in that at all. It is becoming a bit of an issue. We're obviously losing the toss quite a lot, so Barry needs to sort out his randomness of tossing. That sounded dodgy, to be fair.
Yep. Moving on swiftly.
Anyway, moving on swiftly, but you know what I mean, he just needs to make sure he wins the toss. I think it is becoming a big issue, because obviously whenever we then go to the second half like we did on Saturday, the sun's gone and that advantage has gone. In terms of the goal with Shea, I think I've looked at it back a couple of times, as that's what I do, and his position is just wrong. If you look at where the ball goes into the net, it probably goes in about waist height, so it doesn't actually go in to the top corner. It's just basically he tries to, as he sometimes does, he tries to basically, his starting position is probably 6-yard area, and he takes a step in. I think as soon as the goes into the 6-yard area, he can't come back, and then he gets lobbed. So the sun, yes, it is a difficult position over there, but I would suggest Shea really did get caught out by try to be too brave on that. But yeah, the sun's an issue, and we've got to start winning the toss a bit more, because we are getting spun around quite a lot at the moment.
Individual errors definitely seem to be a feature of our defeat. Callum Kennedy particularly made what I consider to make 2 horrendous errors. One in his positioning for the first Yeovil goal, and then obviously he gave away a penalty. Ridiculous tug of the shirt in the penalty area. Disappointing afternoon for Callum.
Yeah, and it was one of those decisions, wasn't it? Because Neil Harley did have a decision to make. He had a decision whether to put Mees back into left back and then move probably Connor Smith into the central midfield role. And in the end, he went for what he started at Notts County. And you can know, hindsight is always a great thing, and we're not going to go in about hindsight. Yes, you should have done the other, but ultimately that's probably a decision that didn't do us any favours, because ultimately Compton had a field day against Kennedy. Kennedy could never really pick him up. You look at the first goal, Kennedy, Osborne for some stupid reason gets drawn out and tries to come out, and Richie leaves Paul Robinson on his own, and Kennedy should come round and cover, but he just gets stolen march on. Compton reads it better, goes in, and then Shea comes out and it's slotted in. But the penalty, it was a stupid decision. He got caught out, Compton got a run on him, which meant he got behind. But the tug, I was on the Kempflow end and on the sides, and you can see the tug, it's a penalty all day long, no matter how many times you try and just moan about it. But he still had a lot to do to get anything from there. So stupid. I think Kennedy knew it. Maybe it was an instinctive decision But we made lots of individual errors, even on the goal and on the second goal. If you weren't at a game, you won't see it back on the highlights. But Carly Osborne, he's gone away from it recently, but he did that on a ball that come over, tried to get his left foot, tried to just really shepherd it out of play, knock it down line, got caught out. Takes down his player, gets another yellow card, which he can't be far off now. A suspension, and that's where the free kick comes in, where Shea just tops it off and makes another mistake.
Do you think, in talking of mistakes, do you think the substitutions were another mistake? Neil Lardy made a triple substitution. It was like for like, really. The front two changed, and then Fitzpatrick came off for George Frankham. Did he make the wrong substitutions?
I can only call it at the time, and I thought they were right decisions at the time. I thought Lyle Taylor just had an average game for him. I understand from my sources that he hadn't trained all week due to, I think he was feeling a bit under the weather, which probably showed in a bit of a lacklustre performance from him. Tom Millett, to be fair, done all right, but he just didn't work as the pair, and I can understand why he took Fitzpatrick off. I thought he had a very good 60 minutes or so, wasn't it, when he come off? He come off in the 65th minute, so he had a good 65 minutes and done himself no harm, but I thought the subs were right. I can only call it at the time, and I was like, yeah, triple substitution, perfect decision, just try to spin it around. But unfortunately, Yeovil turned in a good performance and just really we never got that bit of a momentum going to really put pressure on, if we're honest. And in the end, I couldn't really argue with Yeovil taking the 3 points.
David Fitzpatrick then burst on. It was his full league debut for us. Scores a cracking goal, great strike, clean as a whistle. How do you rate his performance overall? I know you said that he had a decent 60 minutes. I imagine that there's more to come. I think, to be fair to Yeovil, they defended very, very well. They pretty much isolated Bartram and Fitzpatrick from having too much influence. The wingers were always doubled up on. We never really got them into the game. Are we expecting Fitzpatrick might get another start this weekend, or are we expecting him to get starts here and there, the occasional game every other week or so?
It's difficult. I think it's nice to see that Nuardi's trusted him in that position. He hinted on the Dons player interview that his weakness all along has been really his attitude off the ball, not with the ball. With the ball, he's fine. It's his attitude off the ball and defending. And I thought that part of his game was probably more impressive than his attacking part, because he did work really hard, because we had lots of spells where we lost the second balls in midfield, and he had to really work hard to make sure we were compact. And I thought he did that. So I think he actually come on the way with a lot of credit for what stuff he did off the ball rather than on the ball, which does sound a bit strange, but that has always been his weakness. That's not got him a starting place. I think I'd hedge my bets that he may go for the tried and trusted Frankham. That's probably my gut feeling. It's going to be a tough game out for Bristol Rovers. They've got a good home form, so I think we'll probably go for a more compact. Wouldn't be surprised if we go with the diamond formation, which has really suited us well away from home. So my gut feeling is he would go with Frankham. I think Fitzpatrick has done himself no harm at all, and yeah, really pleased. The goal, and also the goal. How good was it to see us actually shoot from distance? You know, Reeves playing a ball into Lyle Taylor, lays it off, shot from outside the air. We've moaned so much that we haven't done that, and we finally did it and scored a goal for it. It was a
fantastic goal. It was a really nice link-up play in the build-up to it as well, and then the clean finish. It's a good point you mentioned there about Fitzpatrick. They're doing the defensive work. I think I'm guilty. I was guilty on the weekend of really only looking for what he could offer us attacking-wise, because of the glimpses I've seen of him in the past and knowing what skill and pace he possesses. But it's a really good sign if he's doing the hard work defensively as well. We've had a lot of wingers over the last few seasons that have offered, flattered to deceive. They seem to offer us a lot of attacking intent, but they're not interested in doing the hard work and tracking back. I think Toby Ajala was well known more for his work rate up and down that flank as opposed to anything else, whereas the likes of Kevin St. Luce they weren't really particularly interested in doing that and helping out their fullback, so it's good for Fitzpatrick. Game on a whole then, who would you say was your man of the match?
Difficult. I always say it was one of the performances where I reckon we had 5 players that were off the boil. And you can't carry 5 players. And I would say my man match has gone to Barry Fuller, just because with him he never drops below a standard. You probably heard the expression of it. He always gives 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. He doesn't drop his levels. And I thought he tried to push on for that right back position and tried to lead by example. It just wasn't to be. But I don't think there was anyone else really that stood out for me. So Barry Fuller probably would be my man of the match.
Paul Raymond uploaded the vote, our Twitter poll following the game for our man of the match. Our 4 candidates, Barry Fuller was amongst them, Jake Reeves, Tom Elliott and David Fitzpatrick were the other names mentioned. David Fitzpatrick actually won the vote on Twitter with 55%, although I'm assuming that's more to do with the fact he was a young player making his debut and he scored. Barry Fuller only received 6% of the votes alongside Jake Reeves, Tom Elliott 33%. That's probably to do with goals as well. Villain of the week?
Take your pick. There's a few, isn't there? I think the second goal was such an important such an important goal. 2-1 up. We needed to try and see out and be in the lead for a little while. And Carly Osborne, I suppose it's not a villain. It's just individual mistakes. And I suppose Osborne and Shea for the second goal, which really we need to keep that lead at that point and go to half-time leading. I just felt that was probably the villains of that, but just pure for their role in the second equaliser by Yeovil.
On Twitter as well, obviously, we have our hashtag Don's 3-word report. We invite you to give a match report in 3 words. The pick of these this week, Pete Hotchkiss, at Pete Hotchkiss. That's a great Twitter handle to have. So I could argue he slightly played with his words a little bit here, but didn't want it enough. Questioning perhaps the application of our players.
Isn't that 4 words?
Well, he was very clever. He made want it into 1, so it became didn't, with a contraction anyway with didn't, but didn't want it enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll give him that.
Yeah, we'll give him that. Colin Whitehair, at AFC Silver Fox, said lower team curse. We do seem to have this problem of performing, in my lifetime support in Wimbledon, of raising our game and getting results off the bigger teams higher up the table and struggling against those beneath us in the table. But winner this week, friend of the show, Ray Armfield, at Kent Womble, in the discussion linking Jack Compton, hat-trick scorer for Yeovil, he simply said, straight out of Compton. Very good, Ray. Well done. And Ray actually also put Jack Compton as his one to watch in the programme, in the away team section that Ray edits and puts together. He did say Jack Compton was the one to watch, and he was correct. A hat-trick for the man. Which links us nicely to this week's teaser. Stu, I'm going to set the teaser and you can have a think about it whilst we sit and listen to Seb Brown's interview, and the listeners can as well. This week, simple teaser, following Jack Compton's hat-trick against us on Saturday, who was the last opposition player to score a hat-trick against us? Quite a nice and simple one this week.
Ooh. Yeah, nice and simple, Nick. It's always simple when you have the answer.
I will give you a clue. You were present at the game.
That narrows it down a little bit then, doesn't it?
That might help out a little bit, because it's not like you attend most games or anything.
Okay, I'll think about that one.
Cool, we'll have a think about that one during the second half now of our Seb Brown interview then. So we started off last week with the first part, talked about Seb's career, especially in the non-league days, the conference days. Now we're going to look more ahead to what happened after we entered the Football League. Enjoy. We started with that famous game against Bristol Rovers, another televised game like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
We lost in the end, but we showed great spirit coming back from 2-0 down to get level, and then I think Brett Johnson had a moment of madness.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that experience, that whole experience being in the Football League?
It was just the occasion walking out was just insane. Like, there was obviously the cameras there again, and it was kind of the first game back in the big time. We had the commemorative kit and everything like that. So it was just the real occasion of it was really good. I think we were probably a little naive in the way that we kind of went into the game thinking that we could play the same way we'd played in the conference, when obviously people at that time had the scouting ability and that sort of thing to report on the type of things that we do. And I think that paid a price a little bit in the first goal, which I think I took most of the blame for, but gave Ricky Wellard most of the blame for. And I think
that's fair to give Ricky Wellard.
Threw it to him out in the middle of the pitch, and he just got caught on the ball, and that kind of opened things up a little bit. But I mean, in terms, like you say, the team spirit, because again we had a lot of new players coming in as well. I think Charles Adamino got on the score sheet as well, which again, like for a new signing, it must have been a great experience in your first game to stick one in and get us back to 2-2. And I think from what I remember at the time, I thought the penalty was pretty harsh, and then I think when you watch it back, it's kind of it's one of those where sometimes you'll get away with it, sometimes you'll get it given. So it was obviously disappointing, but we knew there was a long way to go. And I think at that point, again, we were really focusing on sort of, I think it was 50 points or 40 points? I forget what Brownie said. I think it was 50, was it?
I think,
yeah. So we were focusing on just getting to that marker, and we knew that there was still 45 games to do that. So I think that was the kind of the key.
Yeah. I think we bounced back off that. I think we went to Dagenham, we got our first win in the Football League. We had a midweek game down to Plymouth, which was memorable. Jack Nixon scored twice, we won 2-0 that night. And then it was sort of up and down season. We had some real highs, some great results. We had some lows. We had some Macclesfield, for instance, 4-0 and what have you. We had the Scunthorpe game that you mentioned in the FA Cup, but we did have this big period where we were winless for quite a stretch. I think from the end of what would have been 2011 into 2012.
Yeah.
Quite a long run. What was the feeling of the dressing room at that time? Because it was quite a stretch. I think we ended it at Port Vale.
Yeah.
But were there concerns at that time?
I mean, obviously you never want to be in that position. I think we always went into the next game thinking we could get out of it. I think that was the key. But at the same time, I think the sort of signings that were made in January were really kind of a lifeblood, because I think it was Billy Knott, George Moncur, I forget, Byron Harrison maybe, yeah. So they kind of brought a bit of a fresh kind of impetus, and I think George and Billy particularly within the midfield gave us a little bit of extra quality in there that maybe we were lacking, and certainly George with his kind of industriousness and Billy with the skill that he had were really sort of good additions at the time, and I think that played a big part in the turnaround as well. But I think from the squad that we had, we certainly went into each game thinking we can certainly turn this around, because it was I mean it still is a league where everyone can beat everyone, so I think it was more a case of after the games we'd be like a little bit dejected because obviously it was what had happened, but then by the time next Saturday or the Tuesday had rolled around, we kind of knew that we could do that. And I think because earlier in the season we'd had a really good run, hadn't we? I think was it Cheltenham and Gillingham? Was that season where we beat them like 4-1 and 5-2 or something at home?
The Cheltenham game, I think, was
Cheltenham
we beat 4-1
at
home. Yeah, we did. Yeah,
we beat, because I remember Benno when he was at Cheltenham getting roasted, and that was when they had Butland as well, I think. Which was
yes,
it would have been.
Yeah.
So 4-1, and so we did them 4-1 with Butland and Benno, which is not an easy task. No. And I think Gillingham was a couple of weeks later as well, where we managed to beat them quite comfortably at home.
3-1, 3-1 at home.
So that, like I say, we knew that we could match those teams, and we knew that we could beat those teams. It was just a case of at the time we'd go into games thinking that, and maybe something would go against us. And I think we weren't in that position where we had the kind of the spirit in us to kind of get back. But I think, like I say, that injection of a little bit of kind of fresh blood always kind of sorts things out a little bit and gives everyone a little bit of a pep up, and I think sort of motivates them to do a little bit better for their own place. And then obviously you've got the addition of those players coming in that kind of add a little bit of a different dimension as well.
Looking back to when we got promoted, and then obviously the summer, we had a bit of a mad summer, didn't we? Because I think losing Danny Kebbell during the window to Gillingham bought Jack Midson in. There was rumours around the time that Jack Midson wasn't necessarily brought in to play. He was brought in to play with Keds rather than replacing Keds. Do you think that had a big play? I know we went into the season on quite a big morale and we brought that through, but actually losing Keds was quite massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to miss a player like Keds, like we kind of touched on before, someone that can hold the ball up, can finish a chance, and can also sort of bust his butt to go and chase defenders down and things like that. And I think Mids was a very different proposition to Keds, and I think they probably would have worked quite well together. And I think he was probably, at least to start with, sort of, I guess, looked upon as a direct replacement for Keds, which I think does him very little justice, which I think in the end, obviously with how well he kind of played here, it kind of turned around the other way a little bit. Means kind of showed what he was about. But I think, obviously, as I said, with someone like Keds in the team, you're always going to give yourself that extra dimension. And I know that people at the time were obviously a bit wary that Keds hadn't played in the league or at that high of a level, but I think he then went to Gillingham, and a lot of people say he scored a lot of pens, but he ended up as their top scorer. So I think,
and they loved him down.
Yeah, and he was a local lad to him, wasn't he? And you can't, like I say, appreciate. He said, what was it? He said he was going to stay in the summer and then moved on. But I think within football, a lot of the time, not necessarily a loyalty, but if your club comes knocking for you, it's a very difficult thing to turn down, as much as you love the clubs that you play at. So I think that was obviously a big sort of factor in his decision. And of course, we missed him. And I think we could probably be accused of not replacing him sort of as fully as maybe would have been necessary. But in the end, that season, like I say, I think the main goal was just to keep ourselves in there, and I think we did it. I won't say comfortably throughout the whole season, but by the end of the season we were in a position where we knew that we'd be in that league for next year, so the planning could start. So. Yeah,
I think you mentioned there Kedwell having that draw of his boyhood club always coming to get you. It's hard to say no to. I'm imagining another thing that's difficult to say no to when the club comes into you is the size of their car park. And that pre-season, Stephen Gregory also departed us. Was his loss? Was his similarly sort of? Did you have that sort of similar idea that Greg's was a big loss at the time?
Again, he was someone who I think was very undervalued for what he brought to the team. A lot of people think that little holding sort of midfield position is sort of somewhere you just break the play up and stuff like that. And I think, considering he was a very sort of skillful player, he could play a pass, he had an eye for a pass, but he also contributed to that defensive side. He was 6 foot 6'3" as well. So he had an aerial presence about him, even though again he wasn't a particularly big, strong guy, but he had that presence to, if he was screening the centre forward, he could win the header before the centre forward did, and the centre half can just kind of let him do that. So I think that was kind of a bit of an underrated thing. I think it was kind of expected that kind of Ricky could just fill that void, and I think that's a different style of play for Rick. I don't think he, again, despite being 6'4", I don't think he'd ever claim that the aerial side of the game was something he enjoyed. He was very much a sort of passer. He'll have a sort of an eye for a pass. He could play a very good ball, but I don't think he kind of looked to win those aerial battles quite as much as Gregors did, despite him being kind of, he looked upon as a bit of a pretty boy within the dressing room, but it's hard to argue with that, I guess.
But Ricky was again a youngster, wasn't he? You look at him now; he's now a captain at Welling now, you can see now. And to be fair, Ricky you could see he was quality, wasn't he? But I agree with you. I think Gregory. I mean, the problem we had back in that season is that we went from a team of when we went through the conference and went through the run Prem and the Conference South, we were very much, we picked off the players we wanted. I think from fans, we were the first time we actually lost a player we wanted to keep. So when we lost Gregory and lost Keds, I think it was a hard pill because we never had been targeted from our best players. We nicked other people's best players. So, but the window, it's interesting because January window, you touched upon it. You know, we recruited really well. We went through a win. We won 3 games on a spin. Port Vale away when we bought George Moncur in, Beanot, and also Jason Young brought back on. He already come back in, didn't he? So we went on Port Vale, won at Gillingham 4-3, which was a memorable game as well, and then won at Macclesfield. So that lift was quite massive. Cause was it like having Jason Young back as you must have seen him on the Saracen surely at Stellast?
Yeah, no, I remember watching him at the time. I mean, when he come back in, obviously he was what you want him to be, an experienced head. I think that was what we were probably lacking, if anything, someone that's been. And I think the game up at Port Vale, he sort of showed the quality that he had in that kind of. I think he played in the little number 10 at the time, the top of the diamond, and to have someone in there with that kind of quality was just something that we hadn't necessarily had, because you can tell the difference when these guys come down from the Premier League. I mean, we had like players that have trained with us that have come from high levels, and you can see where when they're at their prime, you can see why they're where they were, because they've just got that eye, they've got that kind of reading of the game, and I think that was the case with Yawley. But unfortunately, I think he got injured, didn't he, in the Port Vale game? He didn't really feature that much, but in terms of the effect that he had in the dressing room, I think that was as much of an investment as kind of bringing him in for the playing side of things. So I think that was kind of the impact that he had. It wasn't necessarily as much on the field. I think, was it Bradford at home? He scored one of the goals that beat them.
I think he got a penalty or something.
Yeah, I think he was. So he in the games that he played, he was quite instrumental. But at the same time, like I said, I think he'll probably be obviously as disappointed as everyone else was that he didn't quite get the amount of game time that we would have wanted him to. So.
And then that first season, as you say we comfortably stayed up. I think towards the end of the season we went on a decent run. We ended the season quite very well. I think we won sort of, off the top of my head, it was like 5 of the last 6. I think we did very, very well. What was then the atmosphere going in then to the second season? How did you as a squad feel going into that season, or you personally? Few changes, few new players brought in. We brought in the likes of Warren Cummings, Louis Harris, a few others. Pim Balkishin, I think, came in. Did he sign full-time for us?
He did.
What were your expectations going into that second season, and what were your feelings about 6 games into that season?
I think when you we broke up a lot of the team that we had. I think Brownie made it very clear that his idea was to get a lot more experience in. Which, I mean, ultimately that probably proved to be his downfall. I think the way he looked at it was more a case of, rather than having an Ed Harris and a Fraser Franks for however much per week, you can have one Warren Cummings or one Pim Balkestein or whatever that way. So I think that's the way he certainly went with it. We knew we were going to run with a very small squad, which the likes of Frankie and Hugh, who got a lot of game time that season, considering they were kind of fresh out of the youth ranks. So I think it kind of transpired to not really work out how it had planned. I think the actual thought behind it was there. I mean, it was probably the right decision based on what we'd probably lacked the season before. But like I say, ultimately it was just the way that it panned out. It didn't quite work out the way that I think we would have wanted it to. But at the same time, you don't really know that until you start the season. I think that's probably the view that we had sort of 6 games in. I think at the start of the season, you look at where these guys are coming from, and you've got someone like Warren who's played 10 years at Bournemouth and was starting out at Chelsea, and you've got people like Stacey Long who every time we played against him had been a real sort of thorn in the side, and you look at these guys, obviously Louis Harris you mentioned came out of Wolves, so you're looking at them thinking we should be alright here. And then I think, like I say, I mean, the first game we scraped through a 1-0 win against Chesterfield, where I don't think I've ever been as busy in a game before. So I think that was kind of a bit of a warning shot. And then, like you say, by the end of the kind of first sort of 6 weeks or so, we kind of knew it would be a long season. I think it ultimately transpired, like I say, that it just got to the point where we were having a couple of injuries, and we were playing the likes of Hugh and Frankie in League Two matches when they played sort of a handful of games for the reserves, or we didn't have an under-21s at the time, but like like Gailey's reserves and things like that. So it was kind of a case of a little bit much, a little bit too soon, and a little bit kind of the people that were brought in were maybe not the right fit. And I think that was ultimately the price that I think everyone paid for that season, really, for having to go through what we went through.
So we had, I think the week, I think you probably remember as well, is away at Burton. Losing 6-2, and then Bradford. What was that week to get through? That
5-1 at
that was a tough one. That was
5-0 at half time.
Yeah, that was a tough thing. And to be fair, at that time it looked like, I know I was there at the time, and Terry looked very despondent from a lot of things. How was he during that period? It's a tough time, wasn't it?
As we've touched on before, he does wear his heart on his sleeve. I think, in a way, that's a bit of a downfall because you do broadcast that across to the team, and you do kind of have that aura about you where people look and go, he looks really despondent. But I think ultimately everyone sort of always looked at it in that we could turn it around. I think we brought in the lad from Yeovil, the left back, and for the first 10 minutes he looked he looked really good. And then he got injured, and it was almost like that was a bit of a sort of a sign of kind of how things were panning out for us. But like I say, you still go into every game knowing that one kind of win or sort of certainly a good performance will turn things around. I don't think that ever changes. I mean, I know obviously it's more when things go against you that it becomes difficult, but certainly going into the game you always feel like you're on a level playing field, and that you can kind of turn things around. But yeah, it was a really difficult period. I mean, some of the team talks that we had were very frank, very brutal, and I think, like I say, that's ultimately what was required, but it was more a case of how do we change that, and the things that we tried just didn't really seem to work.
So obviously after that, Terry departed, Neil Loddy came in, big change. You found yourself out of the team for a little while, sent here, there, everywhere. We had a long battle against relegation that season. We managed to rescue it on the last day. You stayed then back with us for the following season. What are your memories of your final days with the club?
It's a frustrating time. It was a time when it tends to bring sort of renewed hope for the club, and everyone knew that the kind of key areas, and that was not something that I kind of expected, but ultimately it's a new manager and things change. That's their impressions, and I think, like I say, ultimately the way it panned out, the kind of end of the season, it was still a nail biter, even though obviously everything that had changed and everything like that. So I think that was the kind of that was the real kind of the shame that we couldn't kind of get out of it a little bit. But again, I felt a little bit kind of detached from it all as well, purely because, like you say, you're training here, so I'm training sort of with the boys, but then on a Saturday I'm off at Woking and wherever else, or not travelling if it's an away game and things like that. So it was a little bit of a strange and kind of difficult time. But certainly, like I say, the following year it was clear from the start that I was kind of going to be a number 2 at best. I had sort of looked to get out. It was always a difficult market in the summer because you're battling with free agents and things like that, and it was always kind of a case of, well, at least I can do is kind of sit here and sort of see my contract out, certainly, and that's what ended up happening. I think there was a couple of opportunities to go out on loan, which was, I think, the initial idea, because obviously Bezo could sit on the bench, but in the end it didn't pan out because I think Bezo injured his knee quite early on, and then it was kind of in and out after that. I think then he kind of stepped more into the coaching role rather than the player coaching role. So that was kind of it was sort of a difficult time.
So having discussed his time at AFC Wimbledon, Seb then sat down with Stu to watch a video of the penalty shootout at the City of Manchester Stadium and talk through what he was thinking and feeling as the shootout was unfolding. So this is Stu talking through Seb through the penalty shootout at Manchester City.
If I give you an idea what we're going to do, what we thought would be a good thing to do was to go through each pen and just really sort of summarise how you were feeling. Now, while you've got a piece of paper in your hand, there's a lot of thing about this piece of paper. Was there anything on it?
There was names on it and tally of where they'd gone, which me and Prids had put together. Sort of, I won't say we were working on it for weeks, but we'd put together kind of the week or so before, just purely by going through YouTube and sort of having a look at the people that take their penalties, whether it's been for Luton or former clubs, and just kind of seeing if there was any pattern. And it ultimately turned out the two with the kind of most pattern were the ones that I saved. So it worked out quite nicely. I think certainly the first one, I think it was Lawless. He'd always put it that way. So in my mind, I knew that was the way I was going. If he'd have gone the other way, then fair play to him. But the second one was a little bit more difficult with Walker, because he'd kind of split his up a little bit, but he had a bit more of a tendency to the keeper's right. But then obviously he tended to he had a couple down the middle as well. So I didn't want to go too early, which ultimately worked in my favour, because with the first one I could always sort of go a little bit early, because that was always the way I was going.
So obviously talking as Mark Tyler, who's a decent, very good goalkeeper. Yeah. Is it goalkeepers union at that point? Do you sort of wish each other luck, or do you actually go? Or actually secretly, are you trying to get an idea what's in their head? Or
no, I mean at the time you're just kind of wishing each other luck. I mean we're both in the same position ultimately. We know that that's kind of what we're there to do. We're there to save it. And ultimately, Mark's a great guy. Obviously, he's been around the game for ages. So you knew that from his side there was no hard feelings, and it's the same ultimately from my side. If he'd have saved every pen, it would have been fair play to you. Well done. You deserve it for that. So it was really amicable. We were talking about things that had gone in the game before. Oh, in like the game up until the penalties. So he was just saying how he didn't see the one that. Was it Yaks put on the post or someone put on the post? I didn't even see it. I was like, oh, great. And then he was obviously talking about the penalties, saying, oh, you're lucky with that one. I was like,
so did he? Was he trying to look at a piece of paper? Do you reckon he was curious?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I wasn't paying as much attention to it myself, to be honest. I was just trying to see if I could get it down my sock a little bit. But
so Lawrence is stepping up. So are you thinking? You know where he's going to go? Obviously, I know you made yourself big. Are you thinking actually? I'm going to stand up. Was there any tendency what you're going to do in this one?
This one, like I say, I had him down that I knew he was going to go, or certainly that his tendency was keeper's right.
Okay.
So I always knew the way that I was going to go. Ultimately, it wasn't a particularly good penalty, but it worked out.
Relief there?
I think more just celebration than anything else, like to actually have that adrenaline rush where you actually make that save in front of our fans as well. You just don't get that sort of anywhere else in that sort of a situation. I think that was kind of like I say, more the happiness and that side of things. But yeah, I mean, you don't really get a lot of time to think. That's why I like to have that sort of already made up in my mind a little bit.
Same hand, was he ever going to miss?
From the penalties that we had in training, I honestly didn't back any of them to miss. We'd been practicing for... It must have been 6 weeks, in the point where we had training goalies training with us that we'd have to put them in because me and Jack would know where the boys would go. So it was getting to be a little bit false. So we had these guys that were training with us anyway, that for after training they'd do a penalty shootout with the lads. And I mean, Sammy can strike a ball, so when he hits it, it stays hit, and I think that was the case there. I mean, I think Mark went the right way on majority of our penalties. Actually.
Yeah, he did.
It was only Yakubu that sent him the wrong way, and
Yakubu is probably
we'll
funny. Yakubu. So Pilkington.
We didn't have any
centre half,
real
isn't
data.
It? Yeah,
we didn't because obviously it's not really centre halves who step up and take the regular penalties. So we didn't have a lot on him. So that was pure guesswork. I could see from his run up that was kind of where he was sort of shaping to go. But when you put it up there, you're not going to get anywhere near it anyway. I mean, that was the start of a run of about 3 really good penalties, I think, or certainly Sammy's was
top corner, wasn't it? Yeah.
So I mean, you don't get anywhere near that as a keeper.
So next one up is Luke Moore.
Moore was the same as Sammy throughout the whole training thing. He'd been scoring sort of every time. Again, I mean, you just aren't going to save that. And when it goes up there, you're obviously taking the risk that you do hit it wrongly and it goes over. But certainly the penalties that went there, I mean, I think you can see from the reaction of Mark.
Yeah.
He knows he's not getting anywhere near that.
And the thing that struck me when I was watching this back, and to be fair, I was saying to Nick, when you watch this back, loads of memories come flooding, but it actually struck me how confident the players were. Every time I went back, they just looked like they were having a great day out.
Yeah, I think
pressure.
I think that was a big part of what we'd done in the run-up. Certainly with Brownie, he was very keen to make it just another game, as it were, because we knew that on our day we could match Luton, certainly, because we'd done it in the 2 games prior, or the 1 game prior, and then the final anyway.
Yeah.
But we knew that we could match them, and I think that was the key, was just taking away the sense of occasion, really, because that's the thing that can let you down. If it is just another game, then you lose that pressure and that side of things. I think that was why we practiced penalties for 6 weeks, was so that as soon as the boys stepped up to them, it was just second nature to just do what they do and stick with what they want to put it.
So Adam Newton, seen anything of him? Have you seen any? He was left winger, wasn't he? Left right winger?
Right winger.
Yeah.
I used to play with him at Brentford, actually.
Okay.
But again, there wasn't too much on him because he's not someone that would normally step up and take penalties. So this was more of us trying to psych him out a little bit. But in the end, he sort of done me with the eyes, and then he made his infamous shoot gesture, which he probably regrets looking back on it now. But yeah. So.
To be fair, the Wimbledon fans are all behind that goal, weren't they? So
I think that was the nice thing for our lads as well. When they did score, they could just sort of run out, and I think there was a lot of celebrations. Even more.
So Fraser was injured at that time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he'd done his knee. And, it was quite a horrible one, actually. I remember playing in it and sort of seeing him go down, and you knew that when he went down, it wasn't a good one. But to be fair, he's bounced back really well. I mean, I know a lot of the times you worry when that first kind of knee injury happens, but he's back now.
Done well, isn't he?
At Stevenage. Where did he go? Welling after Wimbledon?
He went that way, didn't he? Worked his way back in. I think he always looked like he had. I think we probably went up a bit too quick sometimes in a way for him, wasn't it? He always looked like he had the ability, definitely, didn't he? So we've got Mo. Mo during the extra time went down with cramp.
Yeah.
So was it a case of he was going to take a penalty no matter what it was set?
I think probably yes, and I don't think even though he had cramp, I don't think he'd ever want to not take one. I think he's very assured, as you can see from some of his rapping videos and stuff. He's very confident, and he knows what he's doing. I don't think, even if he'd have been sort of on one leg, he'd have still wanted to step up and take his penalty. And I think it is a shame that he missed it, because no one, like I say, you don't want to see any of your teammates go through that, because at that point you don't know what's next. So you never want to see someone be the villain, as it were. But like I said, I don't think he would have even if he'd been kind of still struggling. I don't think he'd have not wanted to take the penalty.
And it was a side foot. So side foot, sometimes the only person that didn't lift their penalty really. He was the only one who went sort of low, wasn't he?
They're always difficult, because if you do hit them right, then they're so hard to get, because if you have got that, I think Yax's one shows it in a bit. But if you've got that thing where your body shape says you're going this way, but you put it that way, there's nothing you can do. And I think looking back sort of forward in a few years, Will Antwi, when we used to practice, or not practice, but mess around with penalties in training, he had that. I could never get the way that he'd want to go, just purely because he'd have the side foot where he'd look like he's going there and just put it there every time. But he could do it the other way as well. It's just, if you've got that, then a side foot's as good as leathering it or sticking it in the top.
So Terry, I know, looking back, I remember him talking to a copper on the touchline. God knows what that conversation was.
That's probably from him having a few too many beers down in his local.
So 2-2, first one missed after 3 successful penalties, and then
you can see from Brownie there, though, that he does wear his emotion sort of right out on his sleeve. Like you can, even just looking at him, like obviously it's not something I saw at the time, but you look at him and you can see how much he wants us to win that game and the club to achieve what they did, and
Yeah.
that meant so much to him. I think that was kind of the thing that was weighing on his mind. Like I say, I think ultimately he knew that he'd prepared us as much as he could for that game, and then it was just a case of could we deliver.
And from a personal point of view, he had missed out with Aldershot on the playoffs, didn't he? So I suppose from a personal point of view. So Taylor had a chance late on, extra time.
Yeah,
missed it, and then if he was on your team, would you want him to be doing this?
Not really. To be fair, like I say, the ones that I'd seen where he'd gone down the middle, he had kind of struck them like that. It wasn't a full-on kind of chip. It was more of like a little clip rather than a full-on strike.
Yeah.
But he'd done that with good success previously, and I think had I not sort of looked into that and known that was a possibility, I might have gone down a little bit earlier.
Could have passed it in the end,
yeah, and I think that was ultimately what made the difference, was that half a second that I stayed kind of up, and that, like I say, ultimately that was the difference, because if he'd have hit that kind of any harder or anything like that, it probably would have gone in, or at least made a little bit more of a touch. And just the bit afterwards where it's bouncing around, I was so close to volleying that into the top row, and then just as I was about to swing if you watch it, you can see at one point my leg is like drawn back ready, and I was so close, because it was just a moment of yes, that I was then got to the point where I was about to kick it, and I thought, I'm going to get a yellow card if I do this. And so I stopped and picked it up, and then didn't know it's a bit like a hot potato. So that always strikes me, because everyone else just probably thinks I picked it up with it, but in my head I was like, this is going so far into the top row, and then I was like, oh no, I can't really do that.
I think we all just lost it at that point, didn't we? I think psychologically, with the turnaround with Mo obviously side-footing, and then you saved it straight after. I think the turnaround, I think that probably was a big moment. Do you know what I mean with that?
At the point where I'm speaking with the linesman, I said, "What's the score? How many we got to score?" Because I was so lost in just the actual penalties themselves. I was like, you don't keep it. It's hard to keep a track of. Well, we've scored this many, they scored that many.
I think we were doing the same, weren't we? We were sort of thinking, are we this the winner? And then we spoke to Trev and Rocket in a previous podcast, and Trev makes it quite clear when he knew, like you said, practice, and they said Yakubu, but there was an open as if people were taking a breath and going, what's Yakubu coming up?
The story with Yaks is the whole way through all of the practice sessions that we'd done, he had taken his penalties by just walking up to him and just sliding them in the other side. And we went, come on, Yaks, you're not going to do that if it's the playoff final. And he's like, well, we'll see. Everyone's just saying, Yaks, take it seriously. People thought he was just mucking around, not going to take it. And I saw him step up. I was like, okay, here we go. We'll see the real Yaks. And then, obviously, what happens next is just, it is incredible.
As if he's on a Sunday league game, and just nonchalantly putting it in for a bit of a laugh, isn't it?
As a centre half as well. That's the thing.
And the smile comes up soon as well, doesn't it?
If that had been your centre forward or your number 10, you could always you can always see it happening. But a centre half, I remember seeing him step up to it like that as well, and thinking he's not going to. And then
it's not in the corner either, is it?
That's what I say. If he's got that body shape where it looks like it's going the other way, then there's not a lot you can do.
Stephen's keeping up the count, which is...
I was going to say, put that on a big screen, I could have seen how many left.
I suppose it's really weird, isn't it? Because you're involved in it. I suppose you're obviously concentrating on what you're going to be doing. I suppose players waiting on the line are just...
I think it's probably harder for those guys, because you're sort of helpless. Because either once you've taken your pen, or if you're not due to take until 8, 9, and you know it probably won't get there, you're kind of just standing there hoping that everyone else can deliver. Whereas as a keeper, you know that every other shot you're going to get a chance to actually make an impact.
So David Howe's decent player, to be fair, though. I don't think I thought he was going to miss.
He was in the England C set up as well,
okay.
And you could tell from the way he took set pieces there that he was a very accomplished kind of striker of the ball. Again, I didn't have much on him, but I went the wrong way. I went the right way, and ultimately never going to get there. Which was a shame, because that was my chance to steal Keds' glory.
So the story is, and this is whether Keds has done this, but he basically told Terry Brown early on, I'm going to score the penalty and win the game.
I don't know if he said it, but I mean that's Keds in a nutshell. He always wanted the number 5 penalty, because that is his chance to do it. I mean, like you say, no one ever remembers who took the first. As pivotal as it is, no one ever really remembers. until you're watching it back. But everyone always remembers either the keeper that made the save or the penalty taker that took the last one, because they're the ones that get that celebration moment. But I think he earned that. I mean, I think he deserved that moment to get that for everything he'd done in that season. I think was the key. I mean, look at him there. He looks like he's been through an absolute war.
Any doubts?
No, you always have doubts, I think, but I mean, he'd been the same the whole time through. He stuck with his side. He always went that way in training. You knew that if he struck it well, even, like I say...
So where are you on this one?
I'm over there swapping shirts with Mark Tyler. Because we said we'll switch shirts after the game.
Brilliant.
So I was over there trying to get my shirt off with my gloves on, which was probably not a great idea. But so I was out of all of this. Like, I was over there, like, shaking hands, saying well done to Mark, and switching shirts. And then I think I come into it in a minute.
Because I remember, and we I say about Fraser Franks, I remember him coming down the touchline. Right? He was on crutches.
Yeah, he was on crutches and he's steaming down there.
Yeah.
I remember. He was like, after that, I think he woke up the next day and was like, my knee is so sore. And I was like, well, you've been on like a 60-yard sprint to get to the celebration, and then you end up sort of dancing the night away in Manchester. So not a surprise, really. Brilliant.
That's really good looking back through that. I'd say it feels like yesterday, to be fair, looking back through that. But no, appreciate that. Thanks, Dave, for that.
No worries.
Very much enjoyed our time with Seb Brown a few weeks ago discussing his Wimbledon career. He was a fantastic guest to have on the show. Very willing to talk, willing to answer any question. Really, really great time in his company. So a massive thank you to Seb for joining us. Huge thank you also to David Charles and a number of people at the club that supported us, made arrangements for us at the stadium to be able to interview Seb, and who were also very supportive this past Saturday when you might have seen myself, Stu and a few others handing out leaflets advertising our podcast. And thank you very much to all of those that spoke to us and passed on your comments and suggestions about the show. And a massive, massive big thank you to Lorraine as well. Stu, your girlfriend, fiancée, sorry, I should say.
Get it right, mate. I could get told off for that.
I know. It's difficult. She spent a lot of time producing those leaflets, getting them designed and ready for us. They did look fantastic. Thank you very much, Lorraine. And thank you very much. If you are one of those that picked up a leaflet, learnt about the show for the first time, and are listening, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on board. Time to move on to our regular favourite feature then, our birthdays game. And Stu, I'm not entirely sure if a couple of these birthdays are legitimate, which I'll discuss at the end, actually, because I'm just thinking it's bizarrely coincidental in a couple of instances. Let's begin, however, with one you'll like, not Crystal Palace, Barcelona. Sorry, I always get them confused because they play in similar colours. But Gerard Piqué celebrated his birthday this week. How old is he?
Sure, Gerard Piqué. He's got to be... See, again, he come through the academy in Barcelona, so he's been around for ages. I would say he's about 34.
Do you know, he's actually only 29. He's actually younger than 30, which I find very surprising.
When did he make his debut then? He must have made his debut like 14 years old or something.
Probably. Maybe, like 14 and a half, maybe.
Well, they're saying that, I don't know if you've seen in the papers, but the AC Milan goalkeeper made his debut at 16 years of age on the weekend.
Really?
16 years of age, and we're talking about our youth players not being ready at 21. Anyway, minor point.
There we go. But AC Milan, if that had been maybe 20 years ago, then we'd have been maybe thinking this must be a bit special. But AC Milan of these days, maybe they're just really struggling. But anyway, Gerard Piqué then leads nicely on to our next celebrity, which is somewhat coincidental if this is true, but also linked in with my rather random introduction to the show. Shakira, who was born apparently on the same day, has the same birthday as Gerard Piqué, with whom they have children together, don't they? They have two children.
They do. Superb, don't it? At least that way you can't forget your birthday, so you can't get yourself in trouble that way. And also, just celebrating one day gets out of the way, doesn't it?
Well, this is true. There are advantages, definitely. It just seems a bit random.
It does, to meet somebody you're going to marry. I'm assuming they're married. Are they married? Yeah,
I'm not sure if they are married or not, actually. I just think they had children. I'm not sure if they're still together.
Anyway, minor point. Shakira. So she must be older than... I don't know, actually. Is she older than... Again, she feels like she's been around for ages, but then she did go off to see... I reckon she's older. I reckon she's in her 30s. I reckon she's 32.
She is older. She's 39.
Wow, good lad.
He's done well.
39, so
39.
10 years older.
Yeah.
I would never have thought of been that much of an age gap.
No, I wouldn't have done, but 39... I wouldn't believe Shakira was 39, to be honest with you.
Are you sure that Barcelona did check his passport correctly?
Probably not, actually.
I can't believe he's 29.
Barcelona are a bit dodgy, aren't they? So, all very strange. And finally, one last birthday this week. I hope you enjoy this one, Paul Raymond, if you're listening. Hello, Paul. We know you'll be listening. Gemma Arterton.
Oh. I don't know. I don't know if she is.
Oh, don't start this again.
I don't know if she is.
No, don't start this again, Stu.
It sounds like a youngish name, doesn't it? So I would say she's 28.
That's the closest one you've had, actually, so far. She is 30, the big 3-0.
Cool. Well, they say life begins at 30.
They do. They do. And I can tell you, as somebody over the age of 30, it actually ends at 30. Kids, if you're listening, it's a dark, bleak, horrible place this side of 30, and just really make the most of your 20s, because once you hit this age, it's all downhill. Your hips start to go, your knees start to go. This is sounding dodgy now. Let's move on. Unnecessary sensors, off we go. Stu, how was your Christmas trip away, and what was your Christmas Day experience like this year?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. The second time I've been at Tenerife, went to Tenerife last year, but I was the whole holidays this year. I was determined to make sure that I got there, and I wasn't. So I must have had every blooming or juiced a lot. So yeah, I was full of. I went over there. That's the point where we're thinking about now sitting in the John Green stand because we're getting too old.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. We can't stand up any longer, can we?
So, yeah, we probably are right. We are getting to that stage.
We are getting to it. Right. But anyway, moving on then, let's look ahead to the weekend. We are away at Bristol Rovers, a top-of-the-table clash, if we can still consider ourselves top of the table, following Saturday. Stu, what are your thoughts ahead of the trip to a ground that we've not scored at since returning to the Football League in 2011?
Yeah, our record's rubbish there, isn't it? We've only beaten Bristol Rovers once since we got back into the Football League. That says it all, really, doesn't it? Of course, we started when back in the Football League. They were our visitors on the live game, and the only time we beat them was a 3-1 home win back in October 2012.
I remember it well, in the early days of Neil Ardley's reign.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't think I've been a bit under the weather recently this week, so I don't think I'll be going there on Saturday. But to be fair, our record is rubbish. Like I say, you haven't scored there. To be fair, we had a really dodgy referee one year. I'm not too sure if it was last year we went or the year before, where player went clean through, got taken out, and the referee just decided to miss it.
I'm going to suggest it wasn't last year, Stu, because they weren't in the Football League.
Of course. So it wasn't the last year. Silly me. So it must have been the year before that.
To be fair, Stu, I'd forgotten about that as well, but I was watching the Ellen DeGeneres show and she mentioned it.
Of course, and she knows Wimbledon very well now after my gaff.
She does. She was discussing the other day. She was going to explain to Callum Kennedy how to avoid making rash decisions in the box.
Oh dear. Anyway, let's not get myself in any more trouble. So yeah, record-wise, not great. Bristol Rovers is obviously fourth at the moment. Did lose at Accrington last week, so that's interesting. Accrington is still picking up. They're still picking up points, and clean sheet at home to Bristol Rovers. 4 games in hand on a lot of teams. 3 games in hand on us, so that's interesting. Home form, yeah, Bristol Rovers' home form is fourth best in the league. Last 4 home matches, 3 wins and 1 draw. But let's be fair, our away form, we're second in the away form league. So I suppose you look at the stats, it's probably a tough game for Bristol Rovers if they're looking at our away form. So hopefully they're a little bit wary of us and we'll just go in there with, Joe, what, our away form's good, we can do something. Especially after only playing with 10 men on Boxing Day, isn't it? So team news-wise should be interesting, obviously, with the arrival of our on-loan goalkeeper, Kelle Roos. I think that's how you pronounce it. On loan from Derby. Suggests, Nick, doesn't it? James Shea probably has seen his career ending now at Wimbledon with that, because I can't see him coming in from Derby and not wanting to play. Yeah,
let's talk about this now then, because it was the shutting of the transfer window, the January transfer window on Monday evening. And we signed Kelle Roos on that day, and we're assuming we're pronouncing that name correctly. We actually ran a poll. Paul Raymond, again, thank you very much for running a poll on our Twitter account, asking people who they would start in goal on Saturday. And actually, Roos won the vote with 56% of the vote, ahead of James Shea on 42% and Joe McDonald on 2%. Does James Shea need a rest, or has this been a transfer that's been done with injuries in mind? Is James Shea still not? Do you reckon he's not 100% following his earlier injury in the season, which Ben Wilson came in for a little while?
I'm not too sure, because he's been back now. He's been back for a month now, hasn't he, at least? Probably a month and a half, hasn't he? And we didn't. Did we rush him back? He did play the day that Ben Wilson went back. He played a reserve game, the under-21 game. So I suppose I don't know whether we did rush him back or not. My gut feeling is, and I'm always very protective of our goalkeepers, because I just think it's a position that is it's a bit of a lonely position, isn't it? It's one of those positions, especially our position. Keepers, whenever they make a mistake, it's highlighted magnified by 100%. Do you know what I mean? Oh, should have done this, should have done that. So I'm always very protective of goalkeepers, and I think Shea's been decent since he come back. But the more I listen to people who keep saying that he's not the right size in terms of, he's what, 5'10", 5'11", I believe, height-wise.
Well, their size isn't everything.
It isn't, but if you look at the goal, and I'm not just going to highlight the goal to say the goal was the mistake that got him, got us for another goalkeeper in, but I think it probably highlighted to Neil Hardy that he needs someone a bit more presence. And if you look at Kelle Roos, he is 6'4". He's a lump. I've looked at again, as I'm quite sad, I've looked at all his games he's played this season on loan for Rotherham, and you can tell straight away his size is a lot different. He's not as great on the floor, although I would suggest Rotherham weren't exactly playing great at the beginning of the season, so he had a lot to do, but there was a lot of action where he was very commanding in the air and stuff like that. So my gut feeling is Derby wouldn't release him. He was playing under 21 football at Derby, played in the last 3 games. So I would suggest that Derby wouldn't have really wanted him to go unless one of two things: one, they weren't going to renew his contract, or two, whether they wouldn't want to go if we were just going to sit him on a bench. And I doubt very much he'd want to come to us if he's just going to sit on the bench either. So I would say we are probably looking at the end of... I think James Shea will do very well, I think, to get another game for us this season. Let's
finish off just talking about Saturday then, if we're expecting Roos to start. Just a quick prediction.
I'm going to be brave. I think our away form was quality. We play so much better away from home. Whenever we've got beat, we tend to bounce back. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win.
And to flip back then to the transfer window, was there any other sort of transfers that caught your eye in League Two?
Well, some interesting ones. There's some that did get over the line, some that didn't get over the line. I think during the window as a whole, not so much the transfer deadline day, but I think James Collins going to Northampton has really given them that extra push, especially where Plymouth seem to be at the moment, not putting results together, lost again at home to Wickham, dirty Wickham, which that all kicked off, didn't it, with Gareth Ainsworth, Gareth Ainsworth, just sort your life out. Excellent player, but just get a grip on your managing career. Yeah, I would say Northampton done very well. The Matt Tubbs situation's interesting. Apparently run out of time in negotiations with Eastleigh, and the emergency window opens up again next week. The emergency loan window, which always makes you laugh because I don't understand how you class what's an emergency, what's not an emergency.
Loan, yeah.
Used to be the goalkeeper, didn't it? Used to be the goalkeeper, which was classed as an emergency loan. Now it's just a loan window, basically, isn't it? But interesting with Eastleigh that they actually put a bid in also for Billy Key at Accrington, which was probably not surprisingly turned down. But Eastleigh, another one chucking the money. Michael Smith going to Pompey. That's an interesting one. Was at Swindon, went to Barnsley with a view to a permanent deal. Barnsley didn't rate him, it looked like, and sent him back to Swindon. And he's gone now to Pompey. And to be fair, fits the style that Pompey want to play. But they've now got some decent strikers. They really are going to push on this second half of the season. So it's an interesting league. I think we've done all right. Like I say, we haven't seen Russia Conor Smith yet. But the more I look at this goalkeeper, like I say, the more I look at it, I think we've probably made the right decision. I do like James Shea. He's a nice lad, but I just think maybe the height issue is what's causing us the issue. And welcome to Mr. Roos, another Dutchman. And he's anything like the other flying Dutchman we had many years ago. I'll be very happy. If
he's anything like the other Dutch goalkeeper we had many, many moons ago, you want to be a team that's playing Wimbledon on the last day of the season if you need to stay up.
Allegedly.
Sorry. Allegedly. Oh, we're going to do another apology at the start of next week's show.
That'd be your apology.
Yeah, it'll be my turn. Yeah, all right. Listen out for that one, listeners. A couple of other items then to touch on around the league. First of all, Neil Ardley nominated for Manager of the Month for League Two for January. Stu, he will be up against Chris Wilder of Northampton Town, unsurprisingly, Paul Tisdale of Exeter City, and Darren Way of Yeovil Town, naturally. Think Neil's got a chance of winning that one?
Yeah, I'd say it's a race between him and Northampton manager, which I just forgot his name, Chris Wilder, you just mentioned it then. It's got to be a straight race between them, isn't it? Because form-wise, we're both the top ones. I think we've won more away games, so we might swing it. Yeah, the Yeovil boss has done all right. He's swung that around. It's tough at the moment down the bottom, but I think Yeovil, like we said before, more than good enough to come out. And they've got players coming back from long-term injuries as well, so Yeovil will be fine. In terms of, who's the last one, sorry?
Tisdale at Exeter, which probably the fact you couldn't remember probably says it all, really.
Is that because he got a draw against Liverpool?
It says here that a crowded 7-game programme in all competitions amassing 10 points from 5 games, including a 2-1 win over promotion chasing Accrington Stanley to stay in playoff contention.
Yeah, I suppose that's not too bad with that, but let's be fair, Liverpool put out their full string, didn't they, against them up at their place, so I think I do go on record and say if Liverpool put that team out against us last year, we'd have beat them. So, and they've just lost Tom Nichols as well, by the way, in the transfer window as well. So, he went to Peterborough, who continued their long record of picking up proper talent from the lower leagues. Another good one, an undisclosed fee, I reckon probably about 300 to about 500k.
Right, let's get back to our teaser then. Let's get this wrapped up. Last time an opposition player scored a hat-trick against us, a competitive hat-trick against us, Stu, have you got an answer for this one?
I have. I was actually going back a bit further because I don't remember hat-tricks, because I try not to remember defeats too much, because there's no point in dwelling on the bad stuff, is there? But this game I do remember because my mates thought I was going cuckoo when I said we were all over this team in the first half. Yeah, we ended up losing 4-0.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, it's Mr. Jamie Curriton who didn't really adhere himself to Wimbledon fans after the game either. So 4-0 win for Dagenham and Redbridge, and Jamie Curriton, who of course continued to score against us this season, although to be fair, I don't know how much he paid Ben Wilson.
He was helped by Ben Wilson this season, but yes, indeed, you are correct. Helped, yes. Aided and abetted.
Even I could have scored that.
Well, yeah, anyone could have scored that. Well, maybe not you.
Yeah, Ben did.
Yeah. Dagenham and Redbridge, you're quite right. 6th of April 2015, we lost 4-0 at Victoria Road, and Jamie Curriton scored a hat-trick. Jamie Curriton will be 75 years of age. He'll be walking around with a Zimmer frame. He'll be retired from professional football, and yet he will still score against us.
Yes.
It's ridiculous, but there we go.
That'd be in the Walking Man's League for the over 60s person.
Yeah, walking football. It'll be in the programme.
Walking football. Yeah. There's a league, there's a market for that.
Right, thank you very much, Stu.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Remember, updates from Bristol Rovers will be available on Twitter this weekend at 9YRS Podcast, so follow us on there. Also check our website 9yrspodcast.com. There'll also be updates on there, as well as our 5 things we learned from the game on Sunday. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you will join us next week when we'll be joined by Peter Odemwingie. At least we think we're going to be joined by Peter Odemwingie, if he hasn't already been signed by another podcast, maybe a Bristol Rovers podcast, or a West Brom, or a Crystal Palace. I don't know. He might not even turn up. We'll see. But make sure you turn up next week for episode 29, and we'll see you then.